which is the Macau Formula 4 race qualifying race, is give us a safety car start. In other words, when the cars leave the grid, the race will be underway, and that is on safety grounds so that the drivers can have a look at the puddles, because we talk about how little running you get at Macau anyway, but they got a free practice session and a qualifying session yesterday. That was it. It's not exactly somewhere you can come and test. They've got no chance whatsoever of seeing Macau in the wet. There are wet tyres, of course, so there's a lot of self-preservation, and how many laps we get before the race goes fully green, we'll have to wait and see. The grid is based on qualifying yesterday that was 3 times interrupted. Arvin Lindblad and Freddie Slater, the 2 teammates at SJM Theodore Prema Racing, are at the front. Hadrian David lining up there 3rd on the grid, and 4th is a double winner of the Macau Grand Prix, in fact, when it was for F4 cars, Charles Leung. So they are the drivers that are going to be in that order when they leave the line. No overtaking, of course, whilst the safety car start process is underway. Everybody has the same car, the Tasha chassis, Qualy 1400 turbo engine. They're on GTI tyres, but where the nuances come in, well, the driver ability, of course, and the teams, and how well you work with an engineer to get the best out of the package.
So I've worked here for the last 10 years. The first year I came here was for the 60th Macau Grand Prix celebration double weekend. And I do remember rain here. I remember before a qualification race for Formula 3 for the Macau Grand Prix on the Saturday. It rained before the race got underway. There was a big area on the grid which was wet. I don't remember this. I don't remember a wet circuit. And it's interesting, these are young drivers. It's a very international field for F4 this year, which is superb. They've been the headline act for the last 3 years, and now they are the headline act on this first weekend. It's superb to see them all out here. But they're young drivers, and as you rightly say, they haven't got a lot of experience of the gear circuit, maybe with the exception of one driver, Charles Leung, who has won twice here in 2020 and 2021. But other than that, the teams have just given them an unusual set of tyres with a couple of grooves in them and say, we'll put these on, you'll be fine. We've yet to see how tricky this is going to be.
Absolutely, and I should think there are 1 or 2 nervous drivers. Bianca Bustamante, spectacles on, getting set, ready to go racing.
Commentators, David.
Well, there is that, especially after yesterday in the dry when we had so many stoppages. Enzo Ye lines up on the grid, the driver from Chinese Taipei in the car run by Asia Racing Team, or ART, a different sort of ART if you like. And their number 72 is Liu Kai-sun. Now, these races also part of the China Championship, from which many of them have come, although there are drivers, as we've been hearing, from Europe and here from Japan as well, which you can see Miki Koyama represents in car number 8, the super license entry, double Kyoto Cup champion, and also the Japanese Formula Regional champion last year, so another accomplished single-seater driver. In terms of the weather now, I would offer you the fact that there's really the legacy of the overnight rain. It has rained a little bit more this morning, but it's not been a massive downpour. But quite what it's going to do for the rest of the day is anybody's guess. Yesterday the forecast was for wet and not for today, so it's come a day late and thrown everybody's calculations up into the air. Other drivers to keep an eye on just very quickly, Thiago Rodriguez, he's 8th on the grid. He is the rather dominant driver in the F4 China Championship this year. 6 times a race winner, so again, he's a man to watch.
So the grid is cleared of personnel. We are ready for our first race of the day. Behind the safety car, we are standing by, and in 11 seconds they'll get underway. But let's have a look at the grid.
Arvin Lindblad is on pole position with Freddie Slater lining up with him ahead of Hadrian David, and then 4th is double Macau Grand Prix winner Charles Leung. Rashid Al-Bahiri, the Emirati driver, 5th ahead of the Australian Jack Beat, and then it's Rafael Narak and Thiago Rodriguez as the race then now gets underway. The safety car leaves the line and the clock on the race will start. 9th is where you find Martinius Stenson, who crashed yesterday in qualifying. Ethan Ho is next ahead of Bianca Bustamante and Enzo Ye 14th. 15th on the grid, Liu Kai-sun, and then Miki Koyama ahead of Kai Darianani, the Dan Wells managed driver, and then Jia Kun Peng is ahead of number 4 of Marcus Chung. Then it is Chui Ka Kam ahead of Riji Kumita. Lao Xiu Hua is 20th on the grid ahead of Vivian Xu and Thomas Leung to round out the grid. And you can see now why Rui Marquez, the race director, has elected to start them behind the safety car. Just look at that spray. That's horrible.
Yeah, when you said just look now, look at what? You can't see anything. Yes. Just a big ball of spray. And the thing is that here at Macau, it is always humid. It's always a high percentage of humidity. We're surrounded by water. But in fact, we have the reservoir just behind us as well. And it always feels, even if it's 24 degrees, very, very sticky in the air. So surely that's going to mean that it's going to take longer and longer to dry the circuit.
Yeah, and actually there's not much breeze. Yesterday it was a little bit breezy, and that always helps to dry the circuit. And I'm looking at the trees opposite, which was our barometer of the wind yesterday. Barely a flutter.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Which either means they've not woken up or there's no breeze. You can see the cars then wriggling their way down the hill, and just a shot ago there was that cradle hanging over the circuit. The marshals yesterday got plenty of practice in, yet again, getting cars out of the way as swiftly as possible. So these laps all count within the 8 towards the race. It is, of course, the qualifying race for the Macau Formula 4 race, so the results of this give us the grid. It is, with respect, no more important than that. So therefore, if you need a race to be sacrificed behind the safety car, lose a couple of laps, this is the one.
Yes, yeah.
And equally, from a driver's point of view, this is the one not to be a hero in, because you're only going to compromise the grid position. But I'm sure that given a couple of laps, just to let the drivers see what the state of the circuit is like, then they'll be allowed to push. What's fascinating is how different the water levels are. It looked really bad on the run down through Mandarin. Here, doesn't look too bad at all, but granted it's a slower section.
Yeah, and also you've got the undulations of the circuit. That's one of the joys of Macau.
Yeah.
So water runs down hills and collects at the bottom. A little bit like Graham Hill Bend at Brands Hatch. It always gets wet at the bottom and takes ages to dry out. But on the start-finish straight, it could be completely dry at that stage. So
no one's yet found a way of getting water to run uphill, have they? You'd have thought in this modern generation.
There'll be a way.
Yes.
There'll be a way.
There'll be an app.
There'll be an app for that. This is Donna Maria. It's a very long left-hander, and it's at the essentially at the final part of the really twisty part of Macau, where the barriers are either side and there is barely room for 2 cars side by side. They get through Donna Maria, head up towards the Macau hairpin. It's a constant yellow flag zone for the entirety of the weekend. There's no overtaking at the Macau hairpin. And then they come down through Black Sands, Fisherman's Isle Bend, and that is the completion of lap number 1.
Okay, the safety car will stay out. This is the end of lap number 1. As we say, this is part of the race, even though you might be tuning in thinking, oh, okay, it's going to be a rolling start. It's a safety car start, so all of these laps do count. And when the lights go off atop the safety car, that's the indication that it will peel into the pit lane. So the race order is the grid order, and it is Arvid Lindblad, the Red Bull athlete, who is currently the race leader, the LDC Rising Star. Started karting back in 2015. He made his car racing debut at the end of 2022, and this season 5th in the UAE Formula 4 Championship. Then he went into the Italian Championship and finished 3rd in that, and he's done the Euro 4 as well, and finished 4th, and we've had our first casualty under the safety car, into the barriers, I'm afraid, with big damage there. Is Liu Kai-shun, the Hong Kong driver, and what you can see, you don't need me to tell you, he's done the wing, he's done the suspension as well.
Oh dear, oh dear. So the car pulls over right the way onto the right-hand side of the circuit, but it can't stay there.
No.
So it needs to be recovered.
But we're under a race neutralisation process.
At least
anyway.
they don't have to call for the safety car.
No, exactly.
So,
I mean, actually, that is drivable, it's pushable, and they can probably get it across the road to pit exit.
Yes, I think they probably can.
Without too much grief there. But that just shows you how treacherous it is. You know, drivers doing their best to get warmth into the tyres, but we won't be going racing at the end of this lap, I wouldn't have thought now, because that car's going to need removal.
This is really valuable for these drivers, not only learning the conditions, but also getting controlled laps behind the safety car is a great thing. So, yeah, the recovery of the car has commenced. Driver out of car, which is just making sure the steering wheel was in place, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And making sure the car was okay to be recovered. You're going to see it.
He just spins, just lost it in the spray.
Yeah.
And that was coming past us, wasn't it? Just opposite the pits, opposite the team. Loses it, clatters the barrier. The recovery vehicle is on its way. So all of this well-drilled process can take place. There you go. Looks drier now, doesn't it? But race cars, race tyres generate at speed an awful lot more spray.
Do you think that was just a puddle? Because there is standing water, isn't there? There are areas of puddles.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what else would have caught him out.
No.
To spin in a straight line, yeah, I mean, it must have been just
or
a
maybe
bit
too
of
eager
water
on the throttle, I don't know.
Yeah, but he wasn't coming out of a corner.
No.
I mean, okay, if he was too eager on the throttle, it wouldn't have mattered in the drive. it was because of the wet.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it's you blame the conditions, come what may. But I always find, talking to race officials, that cars that crash under a safety car or overtake and crash under red flags, they aren't looked at kindly.
No, and for good reason. I was about to say this is probably the longest they've run over the course of the weekend without any incident behind the safety car. And I'm glad I didn't say that before.
So
they had troublesome free practice, they had troublesome qualifying.
3 red flags in each.
Yeah.
So just to recap then, it is Liu Kai-sun that we have lost in the Pinnacle Motorsport car. And he is out. We had 22 cars on the grid. The safety car will come through the pit lane at the end of this lap, because with that incident on track, just to give the officials a bit more space to work, the safety car will bring the field through the pit lane, and therefore they will rejoin at pit exit after the incident zone. So good thinking by the race officials, another good way of keeping the race going.
They do a superb job of looking after these races. I mean, there is such a body of experience within race control and out on the circuit with the track marshals. And it's just it's a difficult meeting to run because of the inherent problems that you get by not having runoff areas. But the speed with which they take decisions for safety and recoveries, how quickly they're done, it's just superb.
Yeah. And also, yes, you've got this great local squadron of personnel, but the race directors for this weekend, for next weekend, are all FIA licensed anyway. So Rui Marquez, who's looking after this, I think I'm right in saying he's the FIA Formula 2 race director. You've got Eduardo Freitas running the other races this weekend, who is ex-Formula 1. He's the World Endurance Championship race director, amongst other things. So there's an absolute wealth of experience.
Charlie Whiting did this for years.
Absolutely right.
Years
yeah,
and
indeed,
years.
Indeed. So they know what they're doing. They've seen it at different circuits. They know what can be done to facilitate the race to be kept going.
And it was always a reassuring feeling turning up and seeing Charlie Whiting in the paddock. It was quite a nice, comfortable feeling.
Same also, I was fine with Eduardo Freitas. If he can keep 24 Hours of Le Mans going, or Spa 24 Hours, because many years ago he was the FIA GT race director, you don't lose your touch. So there, down the pit lane they come, and under normal circumstances you'd only see an F4 car come into the pits if it had a problem, but at the moment it's effectively part of the lap.
And you can see the huge amount of spray that they're kicking up down in the pit lane. I think this part of the circuit is wetter, isn't it? Much wetter.
Yeah, it does look it.
Yeah.
This is the end of lap 2, 8-lap race in total. And if that car is out of harm's way come the end of the lap, we might be able to send them on their way, but we'll see what the race director feels. Of course, one other aspect of this you often find is that towards the end of whether it's a safety car process or a safety car start process like this, it, being the safety car, will start to go quicker to let the drivers go quicker, to let them get more warmth into the rubber.
Yeah. And it's always a difficult thing in the wet. I saw when they left the grid, a few of them were weaving the cars. It's an incredibly difficult job to get heat, any heat or even warmth into the tyres when you've got this sort of condition. However, what I will say to temper that, the ambient condition out there is really comfortable temperature, isn't it? It's warm.
It is. It is. I mean, the flags are fluttering a bit on the start line, even if the trees that we're looking at opposite are not moving as yet. But again, it's a long lap. It's over 6 kilometres. So if you think about that, it does stand to reason that there will be pockets where the weather is going to be different. Speed starting to quicken a little bit as you look at number 1, Raphael Narat, go through. The French driver, Raphael's father, Raymond Narat, was a very good Porsche racer in sports cars two decades ago. The IMSA Matlock Performance Porsche that had class wins at Le Mans. But Arvin Lindblad, the race leader from Freddie Slater, the British driver who's absolutely annihilated everybody else in Ginetta Junior racing this year before he went on to be impressive in single-seaters. He's a second-generation racer as well. His dad was a Porsche peddler of repute, Adrian Slater. Adrien David, 2019 French Formula 4 champion, running in 3rd place. And then Charles Leung, perhaps the one, as Alan was suggesting earlier on in the broadcast, with Macau knowledge over and above anybody else. Not really yet being able to put that to any benefit because we can't go racing.
Well, yeah, safety car in at the end of this lap. I was just about to say, I think I'm fairly confident they will have cleared the circuit by the end of this lap. They have, we've got confirmation. But also the good news is that safety car in touch with race control have said, no, okay, maybe 3 laps is going to be ample for them to be able to go racing at the end of this. So this is really good news. We get the first race of the weekend underway.
But I don't think that's necessarily the last time we'll see a yellow flag, because in these conditions, young chargers, anything could happen. Yes, they all want to do well. They all want to get a good grid position for later on in the day, but they've also got to factor in survival, and this is where you'll see who the sensible drivers are. So the safety car boards will be withdrawn. The lights should be extinguished atop the safety car. They are. The safety car quickens its pace, heads for the pit road, and Arvin Lindblad now backs it off. He will stack them up behind him, coming down through black sands.
It's really quite dry there.
Yeah, it does look much, much drier. He's virtually at walking pace, as now he accelerates away and gets the drop on Freddie Slater by a couple of lengths, but Freddie goes after him, so the 2 Prema teammates come towards Fisherman's and at speed are about to discover where the grip may or may not be. Right up against the wall goes Arvin Lindblad. They've not yet got to the timing line, so they can't overtake until they do so. Spray is generated, 1 or 2 having to get out of the spray, including Charles Lung, who is the third of the SJM Theodore Prema drivers, but a green flag greets them on the start line, and the F4 qualifying race is underway. Lindblad, Slater, David, the top 3.
Yeah, and that was really well worked out by Lindblad. He was weaving the car, and then almost unexpectedly got the power down first of all. Everyone else has to concentrate so much, and already we've got one that's hit the barrier. Oh dear, oh dear.
I did say it wasn't going to be the last time we saw the yellow flag, and I'm afraid, perhaps inevitably, the drivers accelerate and get caught out. That looks like Kai Darianani, who has clanged the wall. So let's see whether that car can be retrieved, or we need to neutralise the race once again. The top 2 breaking away then, down to Lisboa. Lindblad leading Slater, and then in third place, Hadrian David, as the cars turn through the right-hander. Power up San Francisco now. So you've got Arvin Lindblad trying to make good his escape. Freddie Slater may say, OK, that's fine, I'm going to be on the front row for later on.
Yes.
I can afford to let you go. Equally, he might be just trying to assess where the grip is, get the confidence up, and then push. Let's see what pans out, because at the moment, we've got 5 laps to go. This is lap number 4 of the 8.
Now is not the race to take risks. Now is the race to be steady. Make sure you've got a decent grid position for the main race at the end of the afternoon, and just keep the car in one piece. That's so important. But Lindblad, yeah, just to go back to the start, he just worked it out so nicely. Got the heat in the tyres when he had a dry bit of circuit, so got a bit of heat in the tyres. Ironically, it's the dry bits of the circuit that you want to avoid a little bit later on, because you've got wet tyres on, you don't want them to overheat. But the best place to get a bit of heat in the tyres and then put the power down, on you go. That's police, out of police. Yellow flag at turn 23. And
that'll be for Darianani at the end of the lap, won't it?
Yeah.
I was about to suggest, though, that Lindblad was getting away, and he is, because he's doing absolute best in the sectors. Safety car is called, so the safety car is going to be deployed yet again, and Arvin Lindblad will lose that big gap. He'll keep his place, but he's going to be caught by Slater and everybody else, and it's just taking a bit longer than hoped to get Darianani's car off the track. I don't think actually there's a crane near that, is there? It's Murphy's Law, but he's sort of between 2 corners. There's no chance of that car being removed by crane.
There are cranes on every corner,
yeah, but not on the straight.
You can't cover 6.1 kilometres with cranes. You could try.
So the safety car will be deployed, and safety car by pit lane, again, we're being told. So Arvin Lindblad, race leader. The message has got through. You can see how everybody has backed off the pace as he comes now out of Fisherman's. Where is the car in question? Oh, actually, it is on the pit straight. It was coming out of our bend that we've lost Darianani. So that's why the safety car will come through the pit lane, because the last corner is where the incident is. So the marshals, I think, now will tell the drivers, yep, into the pits.
Oh. It was a slightly last-minute decision there, wasn't there?
All got the message, kind of.
Yeah.
So again, the race continues, albeit under controlled conditions, and by allowing the drivers down the pit road, that means that quickly the errant car can be retrieved. So yes, it was coming onto the pit straight that it clanged the wall, and Kai Darianani, number 88 then, who was 15th on the grid, is going to be further back for the main race.
Yeah, for sure, and they will have to work on the car between now and the end of the day. That's the good news. The teams have got the maximum amount of time that they could possibly have. They've got the whole day's racing.
The 2 cars that need the repair work
Yes.
Both out of the same team.
Yes.
So you talk about the time. Pinnacle Motorsport will have factored that in, hopefully.
They've got a busy day ahead
They
of them. They don't race until 3:40 this afternoon, and that's if everything is running according to the timetable. But they've got a 12-lap race at the end of this afternoon for their final race. And bear in mind, these cars for the last 3 years will have been competing this race for the Macau Grand Prix. They were the headline act for 2020, 2021 and 2022, and now they're the headline act of our first weekend celebrating the 70th Macau Grand Prix, because we have the return for the second time to Macau of the current iteration of the FIA Formula 3 car. So that's something to look forward to next weekend, over 4 days from Thursday.
But I have to say, I think the concept of an international F4 race is a great idea, and whether there can be space for it in the timetable for the future, well, we'll find out. But I think it's a great idea, and you can see the reaction to it from the fact that it's not just a local Chinese entry. You've got French drivers represented, you've got Indian drivers, Japanese drivers, Emirati drivers, Filipino drivers, British drivers, Norwegian drivers, Australian drivers, drivers from Chinese Taipei, as well as Hong Kong and China as well. So the international Formula 4 success is evident.
And you included Macau there, because we've got a couple of Macau drivers as well, of course.
If I didn't include Macau, I kind of took that as read, because you know, it's their home race. Yes, you're right.
One notable one, Charles Lerner, who has won this race twice, and is hoping to make it a hat-trick. It wasn't to be last year. He was close, but not close enough.
And the other driver that's, of course, from Macau is Thiago Rodriguez, who we've not really been able to see the best of yet. With all the interruptions yesterday and in this race, he's not been really allowed a proper run. And they've had so few uninterrupted laps, whether it was yesterday, we seem to lurch from red flag to red flag, or now, of course, we've not had a full racing lap yet in the race either.
No, that's true.
So it's really hard to gauge drivers' ability. It does put the emphasis on qualifying, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. And this is essentially qualifying. It's a qualification race for the race at the end of this afternoon. Well, the good news is that Darian Arne's car is being pulled off the circuit. The recovery vehicle has completed its work on track and now needs to just deposit the car back to the team, and wish them good luck.
Well, indeed, they'll need it. So we've got 4 laps to go. The safety car will be in this lap, so we're going to go back racing. And Arvin Lindblad did an absolute masterful job of the, if you like, restart process last time when the safety car peeled off. We've got a couple of drivers who are under investigation for not following the race director's instruction earlier on. But for the most important part now, the restart is what we focus on, as Lindblad again slows that pace.
Was that about coming into the pit lane?
Possibly. Right, Lindblad accelerates away. Freddie Slater goes with him. So those two on a drier road now come through Fisherman's and down towards our bend. This was where we got the car in the wall last time of Kai Darianani. Still spray evident on this part of the racetrack, but Lindblad then comes down towards the R bend, turns right, and the green flag will greet him as they come over the line. There's still quite a bit of standing water on the pit straight, but Lindblad leading Slater. They go across the line together, and the margin between the pair, 0.4 of a second. We're back racing in Macau.
Yeah, the two are together, and this is great to see. Through they go, and it was notable on the restart of the race to see just how much water was on the actually on the corner of our bend. That's the final turn before they take the start-finish line, and as they now come down, they have a green flag to get racing back underway. This is good news. Now, Lindblad yesterday in qualifying was supreme, and for a little while wasn't on top of the times. It was Freddie Slater that took the top of the times, but Lindblad timed it all to perfection, and qualifying yesterday to put in the lap that he did at the end of qualifying to take pole position was absolutely perfect. What you see with a victorious driver at Macau, and particularly in the Macau Grand Prix, is those sort of decisions at every point over the course of the weekend. So they get qualifying right, they get the qualification just absolutely spot on, and then they've made life a little bit easier for the race itself.
Well, Lindblad at the moment, even though he's the pioneer by being the first one to discover the puddles on the road at any given corner, he is quicker than anybody else behind him. He is just edging away from Freddie Slater. In the first sector, he pulled out 0.3. He's another 0.4 quicker in sector 2, and there are 5 sectors to the lap, so he is building the lead very nicely indeed. Now, bear in mind, that we're going to have 2 laps to go at the end of this. Can we get through without further drama? Let us see. But you can visibly now detect the way that Lindblad has got the race by the scruff of the neck. He is in charge, and there's not much at the moment that Freddie Slater can do.
You can also see how he's working at the wheel as well, because these are very, very difficult conditions. Car number 1 is receiving a black and orange flag, so that's an Iraq, and that will be for something on the car which is not quite right and needs to come into pit lane.
Yes, the mechanical warning meatball flag, isn't it? So whether he's got some damage from somewhere, we'll try and see.
Which he might not know.
Indeed. He's in 7th place, Rafael Narak, but somewhere along the line there's an issue with the car that the race officials have seen and they want it in and addressed. But this is Lindblad coming up then towards now the end of lap number 6. 2 to go at the end of this. And look at the way those two have just stormed away. Hadrian David is in 3rd place. Now, he's an F4 champion, French champion, back in 2019, but he's absolutely nowhere. The Prema cars, the Italian team that carries the Theodore badge for the weekend, absolutely dominating the race here. And Hadrian David, if we lost him, I think we might have done, because he's dropped down the order within the last sector. We have lost him big time. So from 3rd place, Hadrian David is in the wall. That makes it a safety car for the 2nd time in the race, and it also puts now Charles Lung up into 3rd, so it's a Prema Theodore 1, 2, 3 safety car again though, and Hadrian David crashes out of 3rd place.
This race may finish under a safety car, because we have, by the leaders, 6 laps completed. It's an 8-lap race, and we have seen already 2 cars being recovered during this race, and it has taken a couple of laps to get racing back underway. There's only 2 laps remaining, and they are on the penultimate lap.
So, Hadrian David, having just said he's a champion, then crashes out of the race. And where did he do that? He got as far as sector 4 before he found the wall. So Hadrian David out, so it is now Lindblad, Slater, and then Charles Lung in 3rd place. So the SJM Theodore Prema racing cars 1, 2 and 3. Up into 4th place comes Rashid Al-Ghiri, the Emirati driver. Jack Beaton is 5th, and then 6th is Ethan Ho, but Hadrian David will be furious with himself. He's done a lot of damage to that car.
Yeah, front suspension, front wing, a clout to the rear of the car as well. But I can't quite work out where that is, to identify exactly where in sector 4 it is that the car has come to a stop.
It's not on the outside of Donna Maria, is it?
I don't know. If we had a slightly wider shot, then we might be able to see.
Well, we'll try and piece it together on this lap as the cars thread their way through.
Is it coming out of the Melco hairpin?
Not sure. That's the end of that sector, looking at our tracking map. There's another one that's ground to a halt look on the road there, which is number 14. So Rashid Al-Ghiri, who was in 4th place, no, not 14, sorry, 34. So that is Martinius Stenson, and that car's got a mechanical drama. It gets going now, so Stenson is away.
Is that a reboot?
Yeah, looked like it.
Yeah.
Now, was that water in the system? He's fallen from 7th place to last. Right.
He was not without problems yesterday as well. So
that's right, damaged the car yesterday. Yeah, the timekeeping service offers you a tracking map. If a car is stopped in a sector, it shows that it is stopped, but not necessarily at the appropriate corner. It sort of puts it to the end of the sector, and that's where the notification of Hadrian David is. But I'm kind of thinking that it might be up this next part of the circuit before the Melco hairpin. But that's Donna Maria, and it's not on the way in.
All we could see was the barrier, really, wasn't it?
There it is on the way out.
There it is, you're right,
Maria.
absolutely right. Yeah, it's quite tight there, the exit of Donna Maria.
Yesterday, my learned friend on my right said, it's not a part of the circuit we often see accidents.
No, I did say that, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you'll think...
But in fairness, it's not on Donna Maria.
Oh, okay.
It's just after it.
The exit, right.
So the theory stands.
Well, Hadrian David, fascinating that, to explore why he got it wrong there. Now, we're about to hit the time limit, are we not? Because the clock has hit 0. So the safety car will bring them around. The marshals opposite us as the timing line need to be octopuses, because they've got safety car boards, black and orange flag, yellow flag, and a board with a number on it. They haven't got enough hands for a checkered flag.
Can we have someone else to start line, please?
Yeah, exactly. And the checkered flag will be shown this time. So because we've hit the time slot, with all the interruptions. We're not going to get a restart, and so the checkered flag will be shown, and therefore it's going to be a race win for Arvin Lindblad. He wins the qualifying race for the Macau Formula 4 race, which hits the time allowed. Lindblad, Slater, and then Charles Leung make it an SJM Theodore Pramer 1-2-3. In those conditions, perhaps no surprise that it was full of interruptions. It's a shame we couldn't get more pure racing in, but what we did have really illustrated the ability of Arvin Lindblad, didn't it?
It absolutely did, and yesterday in qualifying he was superb. Today in the race he hasn't put a wheel wrong. He was getting the heat into the tyres just at the right point of the final lap behind the safety car at the safety car start. Got everything right, didn't put a wheel wrong. That's not to say he didn't have a couple of little moments where the car needed to be corrected. He was on the limit, absolutely on the limit, and he and Freddie Slater showed a clean pair of heels to the rest of the field, and maybe that's what's responsible for Adrian David going off, seeing the cars, the two cars in front, disappearing and disappearing, maybe overdriving the car to try and bring down that deficit, and they were just in a class of their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arvin Lindblad's got to say, if you're driving for Pramer, if you're driving for any team with the Theodore badge, you kind of are in one of the class seats. But that was just a great drive, and he coped with everything. He had to cope with the pressure from behind, he had to cope with the weather, he had to cope with the different starts, whether it was a standing start behind the safety car, whether it was the race start, whether it was a restart, and didn't put a wheel wrong. So a very, very impressive drive that by Arvin Lindblad. Freddie Slater taking second place, and third going the way of Charles Leung. And I'll tell you what, they will have learnt a huge amount in those conditions. They might not have had as many racing laps as they would have liked, but even so, that's given them a really good insight into what this track is like in the wet. It
would be really nice, wouldn't it, if over the course of today and all the racing that we've got a significant amount of racing over the course of today, if they have a completely dry track for the main race at the end of the day, because the dominant feature of qualification race was the fact it was wet. The gear circuit held the water, certainly on this part of the circuit, by the start-finish line, the first part of the circuit, sector 1, and then as they made their way up into the twisty, tighter section of the circuit, it looked to be a little bit more dry up there, but rain was and a wet track was the dominant feature of race number 1. If they can have a dry race at the end of today, they would have experienced the full Macau experience.
Well, true. 25 minutes they were allotted for that race, and 40 it will be, and 12 laps for the main race later on, the main Formula 4 race, which will be a fascinating race later on in the day.
That's interesting to look at the weather forecast for today. It doesn't talk about rain being the predominant feature. It talks about wind being the predominant feature. That's quite interesting.
It is picking up. Those trees that we talked about opposite are starting to blow a little, but right now the drivers then make their way down towards the Parc Ferme area. I'm still trying to work out what Rafael Narak's issue was that necessitated the mechanical warning flag. We've not seen the car, but it kind of doesn't matter now anyway because the race is over. But Rafael Narak certainly picked up something somewhere that wound up the officials.
So the Met Office app does cover here, which I didn't know it did. It said there might be a drop of rain at around about 9 o'clock this morning. That's about half an hour away. We are just coming up to 8:30 local time here in Macau, and then cloudy, overcast until midday, and then sunshine all afternoon.
Right.
So that will give everyone the full Macau experience, won't it, all in one day?
So the winning drivers making their way into the Parc Ferme area, or in fact second and third go down to the paddock. It's only the race winner that we get for the
we should get them all because we have a full podium for this.
Yes, except the marshals have just waved second and third down into the paddock. So I think there's a Parc Ferme there for scrutineering.
Yes.
And there is Parc Ferme conditions for the winner under the podium.
Yeah.
Everybody else sent down the pit lane.
Yeah. That will be the order. And yeah, podiums for all of our races today. We should get the chance to hear from the drivers as well. Over the course of today there will be press conferences. They might not appear after each of the races, but at some stage we will broadcast all of our press conferences. Chance to hear from the drivers is really important. Yesterday we had such a busy day. I think all the press conferences were broadcast at the end of the day, weren't they? They all get recorded, so you will hear from the drivers. Well, That's 2 out of a possible 2 so far this weekend. Qualification, pole position, race 1, a race win. The big one comes at the end of this afternoon. Not surprisingly, the Theodore team very happy, offering their congratulations to Arvid Lindblad, and he will be encouraged to make his way over towards the podium pretty quickly. The podium becomes the most important feature now in the order of proceedings, and immediately ushered over to start the journey to the podium. And the podium will be coming up very soon indeed. That's our first race of today, and very quickly I think the organising body will be getting ready for our second race of today. Confirmation of the result: Arvid Lindblad takes the win in car number 23, Freddie Slater in second place, Charles Leung car number 11 in third place, Rashid Al-Dahari in fourth place, car number 14, Jack Beaton in fifth, and completing the top 6, it was car number 68, Ethan Ho.
It was a broken rear wing, Rafael Narak, but he was able to cope with that, really because of the low speed, I think, that we had under the safety car process at the end, but it was a broken